This broadcast is the property of Codependents Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependents Anonymous is not permitted. So now we'll start with the CoDA opening prayer. Anyone who cares to join me may please do so. In the spirit of love and truth, we ask our higher power to guide us as we share our experience, strength, and hope. We open our hearts to the light of wisdom, the warmth of love, and the joy of acceptance. Wow. Today's speaker is Jack S. from NorCal, and the topic is Insights on Working the CoDA program, a CoDA program. And so we will allow Jack 40 minutes and then 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll stop the recording and we'll have up to an hour afterward for an informal coffee hour. And so, Jack, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if that works. Can people see my slides? Oh, can people hear me? Hello? Uh-oh. Can people hear me? Can people see my slides?
I can hear you.
Okay.
We can see it and hear you.
Okay, great. Oh, beautiful. All right. So this is Insights on Working a CoDA program. I guess if it's permitted and anybody wants a copy of the slides, my email address is right there. So copy it down and send me an email and I'll send you the slides. Okay. So to start with, everybody's program is different. Everybody's got a different history. Everybody's got experience that's different. Growing up, everybody's house was different. And so the order of processing of different experiences may be different for different people. So in these slides, I'll be using a lot of the first person. So I'll use examples from myself. I am not Mr. CoDA. I am just another person in the CoDA program. Take what you like and leave the rest. What works for me, your mileage may vary. So that's the disclaimer I have on that. So I'll start with talking a little about myself as far as kind of getting into the program. It actually took me a while before I was ready to join CoDA. I remember I was in my therapist's office and he had suggested it and I'm like, oh no, that's not right. They're not the right program for me. And it took about 6 months or so before I actually hit a bottom, and then somebody else in the program took me to a meeting and discovered that now was the time. It took me a while before I was ready to get a sponsor. So, and then once I got a sponsor, the first sponsor I got was the wrong one because I totally parentified him. My history was that my dad was, my dad was a perfectionist. I could never measure up to his standards. And so I had a childhood where I lacked self-esteem a lot. And I was kind of afraid of my dad as well. And my first sponsor was somebody that I kind of turned into him. I totally parentified him. So he obviously wasn't the right one, and I wasn't really ready. Then my next sponsor was somebody who was completely the opposite, because I saw what happened. He was kind of an artsy type, and I'm an engineer. And I didn't parentify him at all. That one didn't work out either. Then the next sponsor I had worked out really well. So it took a while for the pendulum to kind of swing back to the middle, and then everything was good. So actually that was the third bullet there, which is that it took time before I was equipped to find a sponsor that was a good fit. And then another thing that happened to me when I was working my steps, I've worked them several times. The first time I worked them, me being a perfectionist, I spent so many months, and it was like 100 pages, and I don't even think I used the word perfectionism in the steps at all, in my step work at all, because I totally missed the point. But it took me a few times to get it right and to realize what was happening. And we'll see in another slide in the future that a CoDA program or anybody's program can be an iterative process. So, well, here it is. It's an iterative process. For me, the program is, it's sort of like when I was in college, the teacher would assign a textbook chapter to read. And I'd read it and I'd sort of get it, but sort of not. But it equipped me to attend the lecture. And then I got so much more out of the lecture because I had read the chapter. And then when I reread the chapter again, I got a lot more out of the chapter because I had heard the lecture. And it just kind of iterated, and the more I did it, the more I learned, and the more I learned, the more I understood, and it just kind of fed on itself. And it's similar in the program for me too. As an example, some event might have happened, and I would journal about it or share about it to kind of get some initial clarity. I'll mention later that, writing and talking are ways of kind of getting things out for me that I can then kind of look at objectively and understand it a little better. So I do that, but then let's say I'm working my steps and then, so this is what happened. And so I'll have that additional clarity. And then what I'll do is I'll find myself in another situation, a similar situation, but with that additional clarity, I can handle things differently and maybe learn even more. So it's an iterative process on how things go. And to that end also, some parts of one's history may need to be processed before other parts are ready to be processed. So maybe one thing can lead to another. One insight into something that's going on might lead to another insight later on, further down. One thing about CoDA is that it is not a quick fix program. I've actually been in the program for 26 years, and I'm still learning. I've come a long way. I look at it as I'm on this infinitely long road, and I've come an infinitely long way, and I've got an infinitely long way to go, and I'm right in the middle, and I'm walking. I'm a lot better than I was when I started. That's for darn sure. I credit CoDA for having saved my life, actually. But there are days where things aren't going so well, or I have a slip, and that's when I really call on my program to learn from the experience and to grow, and so that I don't repeat it again. So for those of you who are new, hang in there. You're not going to have, every day is not going to be the greatest day, but hopefully you can learn from each experience and help propel yourself forward. So here's a list of the tools of the program that I got from a meeting that I used to attend. And it's a pretty complete list. A lot of it has to do with writing. A lot of it has to do with sharing, being with other people, doing service. You'll see these. So the tools of the program that I have here are meetings, literature, phone lists, step work, writing, sponsorship, service, and traditions. And I'm sure you can even come up with a few others too. The more you do, the greater your recovery will be. Use all the tools, not just sharing at meetings, to get a richer and deeper recovery. Those who only share at meetings, well, they may get a little recovery. They may think that that's all there is. And then they'll kind of stagnate because they won't get all the recovery there is to get because they're not really putting in all the effort. They may be a little disillusioned, and then they'll leave. But I tell you, for myself, There's so much more to the program than just sharing at meetings. And the more you do, the more you'll get, in my opinion. Okay. Being regular in the program, importance of regularity in working the program. So I would suggest, for me, I regularly connect with my higher power. I do it in the first thing in the morning to get off to a good start. I do it toward the end of the day when I'm doing my 10th step. My 10th step is also something that I do that helps me assess what went well. What I do is I'll make a list of things that I did, kind of an assessment of how things went. If something didn't go well, I'll write that down and say what didn't go well and what I want to do differently. And it kind of helps keep me on track. So those things I do, every day. And then other things I'll do when the need arises. Let's see. What else did I say? Okay. I now go to at least 2 meetings a week. When I was new in the program, I went to as many as 10. And as I've been in the program, I've noticed I can taper it off somewhat, but I have to keep going. If I don't keep going to meetings, I'll slip back down to where I was. And I've seen it start to happen. I'll go on a vacation for a few weeks and then I'm like, I need a meeting. And so meetings are extremely important for me to attend. And it's also important to share at meetings. And at really busy meetings, I'll try to share early on. I'll put my hand up at the beginning. Every now and then I won't get called, but I surely increase my chances of getting called if I put my hand up early. And sharing at meetings, of course, is a good thing because it helps me kind of get out what's going on for me. And when I hear myself talk, sometimes that's how I process what's going on for me and what's going well, what's not going well. In addition to meeting with a sponsor or co-sponsor or recovery group also helps as well. I think I have a slide in here. There it is. The next slide talks about the benefits of sharing one-on-one with somebody. And to that effect, sharing with a sponsor is best because he or she is one person and they have a lot of experience and can relate to what you're going through. And also, I've built a relationship with my sponsor for, several years. And so he knows what I'm thinking, and I really trust his not advice, but his guidance, I'll call it. If you can't find a sponsor, find a co-sponsor, which is somebody who's working the program maybe around the same point that you're at. And the two of you can work one-on-one with each other and share your experiences, strengths, and hopes with each other. And you'll spur each other on. The feedback is really good. If that doesn't work, then a recovery group is also good because you'll still get to know certain people at a deeper level. And that level of intimacy is always a good thing. So the importance of sharing one-on-one, as I mentioned, it allows another person to give their experience, strength, and hope as feedback to you. For me, it can help reduce the problem size in my head. As I'm talking to the other person, I process what's going on. And usually I see the problem isn't as big as I thought it was as I'm talking about it. There's that added vulnerability of sharing one-on-one, which makes it it makes that share count more as far as my recovery goes. I will get more recovery when I share one-on-one than at a meeting. It also helps me with connecting with my higher power more. And another thing that helps that I haven't really mentioned much yet is writing. Writing is another really good tool for me, and that's sort of my go-to tool when something happens. And journaling is really good because it's another way of getting it out there. But when I share what I've journaled with my sponsor, then I kind of get a double header there, because I get it out by writing about it, and I also get it out by sharing it with another person. And it gives me 2 times to kind of hear and process what's been going on. And so there's that added opportunity to learn from the experience. By the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. And I'll pause for a second if there are any questions so far. Okay, I'll keep going. Working the steps is really important. I've worked them several times. It's important to work them formally and completely, at least for the first time, because you're kind of getting familiar with them, and really you may not completely understand how they work unless you kind of study them as you're doing them, in my opinion. So, and like I said, the very first time that I worked my steps, I ended up with a 4th step where I kind of missed the point, but I learned from that experience, and then I did it again the next time and got it right the next time. But to work them formally and completely the first time is important because you're kind of doing the steps for your life history. You know, for me, it was like, what made me how I was? What happened in my childhood? You know, what happened a little later in life? And I had to learn about all that stuff the first time through. And it took some time. And so I did it really thoroughly. Or so I thought. I did it as thoroughly as I could. I've since reworked them several times and have come up with additional things since, but I did it to the best of my ability when I did it each time. After working them the first time through, you may find some big event happened in your life, and you may want to work them again around that issue. I've had to work the steps around, you know, other big issues. I'm actually currently working them around a really big issue that has come up for me since the beginning of the year, and I've been learning an awful lot of stuff. It's been really, really good, really, really insightful for me. And this is my 5th or 6th time through, and I'm still learning a lot by working them. So it's okay to work them multiple times. It's also appropriate if some smaller thing comes up, you can kind of work them in the moment, actually, if you need to, or you can journal about them, journal the steps, maybe spend a few hours working the steps on a small issue, or maybe even a few minutes around a small issue. And the point is to kind of get clarity on what's going on, and then with that clarity, then you can move forward, which is kind of the point of the steps, in my opinion. The traditions are often neglected, but in my opinion, but I think they're also really, really important to work. They're worked a little differently than the steps are, at least as far as I'm concerned. I tend to work the traditions more by thinking of meetings as kind of the classroom for learning how to use the traditions. You know, we'll usually talk about safety at meetings, not interrupting people, no crosstalk. That was the word I was thinking of. And so that keeps the meeting safe. But that can also be applied out there in the big bad world out there, which is the lab course for all of this stuff. So in order to keep relationships safe in general outside of meetings, I try not to interrupt. I try not to crosstalk. Well, yeah, I try not to crosstalk. What else do I want to say? I'm respectful of other people. I don't gossip. I apply what I can in the meeting. I believe in the concept of even a group conscience outside of CoDA meetings. At work, when I'm in a meeting, it's important to get all the information on the table so that we can all make a good decision. That's exactly what a group conscience is at a CoDA meeting. It's to get all the information out so everybody can make the right decision. And I don't want to put anybody off at those meetings. I want everybody to feel comfortable so they can share, so that we can get all the information on the table. So that's the traditions. And then, of course, after experimenting in the lab, outside of CoDA meetings, I get to share what I learned back in the classroom setting, in the meeting. And it's often very, very insightful for myself as I'm sharing about that. Okay. So I threw this in. On days when I have a CoDA slip, what do I do? Well, again, it's usually about getting it out, figuring out what's going on in my head by getting it out either verbally or in writing or both. So verbally, well, you can go to a meeting and share about it. That's often a really good tool. Sharing with somebody after a meeting, one-on-one, is also a good thing. I can call people in the program, my sponsor. It's all a way of just kind of being able to talk about it to somebody in the program, somebody who's safe. Writing about it is another great thing. Journaling, I do that all the time. Journaling is so important, such an important tool for me. When things are really, really bad, sometimes I'll make a gratitude list or even a success list to kind of shift my focus back to the positive, and then I can do the other tools, the journaling, to kind of figure out what really happened and what's going on. So sharing and writing, doing verbally, sharing and writing are very important to me. And in order to enable myself to do that, if another person is involved, I'll usually separate myself from that person. If I'm at home and I've had an argument with my spouse, I might come here into the office and just sit down and journal, either on the computer or just freestyle with a pen and pencil and paper. It's also helpful. I usually will connect with my higher power and kind of reaffirm my faith and my trust in him and ask him, what is the lesson that I'm supposed to learn from this situation? Because I really don't want to repeat it again. My higher power is a very patient teacher. They'll keep giving me the same lesson over and over and over and over again until I get it. But if I can learn from that lesson and I don't have to repeat it, so much the better. Okay. Okay, so this is the last part of my presentation, which is kind of my paraphrasing of what the steps are. And the steps are so important. The steps are also in order for a reason, and I've kind of pondered the order of the steps and how they work and everything. I think they're really a gift. They were kind of channeled through people from some divine source. This is my take on the steps, on how they work and how I apply them to my own life on a regular basis. So step one, of course, is we're powerless over others and that our lives have become unmanageable. Well, we got to start somewhere. And powerless over others can mean either that they're doing things to us, in which case, when we're doing our step work, like for the first time, the formal working of the steps, we want to figure out our history, what happened to us as children or in our past. However, kind of later on, it morphs into we're powerless over others in that I'm trying to change somebody and I can't, and I'm like beating my head against the wall trying to change somebody, and I can't change another person. And I'm driving myself crazy by trying to change another person. And it could be that I'm trying to change them by being nice. Sure, I'll do whatever you want. But then I don't really know who I am, and I don't really want to do whatever it is, and I get resentful about it, and the whole relationship kind of falls apart. That's what step one, I think that's what step one was originally intended to mean. So that's step one. We're powerless over others. Step two came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. All right, so I got to where I am based on my own devices. To change will require something bigger than myself. And what might that be? What might that look like? And it's going to be different for every person. In step three, we talk about a higher power of our own understanding. So we have to find that higher power of our own understanding in step two. For me, it started off that there were just too many coincidences for there not to be some divine coordinator up there. That's what it was for me. And it all kind of took off from there for me from that. And I think it's really important to come up with a higher power that works for you, because a lot of the steps are going to be about turning over what's for me, it was turning over what was out of my control to my higher power, and that brought a lot of relief for me. And people have had success at making, the group a higher power. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. But just some power greater than yourself is important. Step three, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power as I understood it. So I choose to let my higher power take me over and show me the way to a healthier life. It's like I got the way that I was through years of doing things my way. So when I turn my will and my life over to my higher power, it's like, all right, what I've done wasn't working, but I'm open to another way, and a power greater than myself that knows what he's doing or she's doing can, just take me over. It's fine. And again, it's really important to develop, I'm going to go back. It's really important to develop a trust in that higher power. You may not get that at step three, though. All you're doing is making a decision to turn your will and life over to your higher power. You can turn your will and your life over to a higher power. Just be willing to do it. And then it'll happen later on as you develop your faith and trust in a higher power. Step four. Okay, so after you've got your higher power figured out, made a searching and fearless moral inventory. So now that I've connected with a higher power to show me the way, it's time to start cleaning up. The first part is figuring out what needs to be cleaned up. Okay, so here's where I make my list of my character defects and also of my positive traits. It's a complete inventory. It's important to include the positive stuff too. But it's also important to include everything, really. It's like when you take an inventory at a store, there are things that, you may want to, sell at a, to kind of close them out because they're not working. And then there may be things that you want to keep restocking and keep selling. But you need to figure out what you've got before you'll know what you want to get rid of and what you want to keep. Step 5, admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. So I've got my list in step 4, but now what is the common theme throughout all my behaviors that I documented in step 4? So for me, it was all about wanting to get out of being responsible to do things because I thought I would fail at them. So that was the exact nature of my wrongs. Everything, or most of the things that I listed that I wanted to change in step 4 kind of boiled down to that common thread. So I knew what I needed to work on. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So I wrote, I see how my life's codependent themes, as summed up in step 5, play out and affect my life and the lives of those around me, and I really want to change. So when I worked step 6, at least one time, that's what I had to do. I had to kind of go through my step 4 items and see how they affected my relationships, and I saw how they were affecting things negatively, and they made me want to change. In the subsequent working of this step, though, it was more about surrendering and actually becoming ready to change. Actually, 6 and 7 are kind of very closely related. The 2 steps tend to be glossed over, but I think they're really important. And actually, I wrote the most for paraphrasing step 7 than any other of the steps. So for step 7, which is humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings, to paraphrase it for me, I wrote, higher power, I ask for you to do for me what I could not do for myself, and remove my shortcomings. I ask for your help with the self-acceptance that humility brings, with the trust that you will support me, and with the faith in your guidance, as I work to act as if your changes are working in me. So act as if. I have to make the changes. I have to make the changes. My higher power isn't going to hit me with a lightning bolt and I'm going to be all better. It doesn't work that way. In my experience, it doesn't work that way. The only way the change is going to actually happen is if I make the changes. It's kind of like jumping off a cliff, or it can be like jumping off a cliff, but that's where the faith and the trust in my higher power comes in, that he will guide me. He'll see things through. He'll walk with me every step of the way as I make those changes. And those changes are hard to make, but I have to do them. And I'm learning how to do that actually right now in this working of the steps. I've got, a character defect of not being, feeling like I'm not being enough, which is kind of taken over my whole life up till now. And I am now doing things, working actively to do things differently, to think things differently as I'm doing them. And I really have to trust in my higher power. And I am trusting in my higher power that these things are going to happen. Okay. So that's humbly ask God to remove my shortcomings. And another key word here is humbly. Humbly means that I'm aware of my limitations, that I know I couldn't do for couldn't do it myself, and then I need my higher power's help. But I accept that. I accept that in myself. And I keep moving things forward with that acceptance of myself and belief that my higher power is going to work through me as I act as if I'm doing things differently. Okay. Then on to the next steps, which is starting to kind of clean up my relationships. Made a list of all persons I had harmed, made a list of all people I had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So now that I'm getting my bad habits under control, it's time to start preparing to make it right with those I have harmed. Step 9 is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so it injures them or others. An amends is more than an apology. It is a statement backed up by action, stating to others how I have changed for the better because of what I learned from our shared experience. So when I go and I make an amends to somebody, it isn't just I'm sorry, it's I'm sorry and I've learned from the experience and this is what I'm now doing differently. And I'll never do what I did again, or I'll promise to do my best to never do what I did again. And if I do it again, then I have to work the steps around it again. But that's okay. I'm a human being. That's cool. But I'm going to do my best to not do it again. And it's also important, I didn't actually put it in the slide, but except when to do so would injure them or others. It's important to be careful how I work the steps, how I work this step to not cause any further harm to anybody else, but to do this step in a way that does the most good for all concerned. Okay, step 10, continue to take a personal inventory and when we've wronged, promptly admitted it. So when I make a mistake, I fess up to it as soon as I can to stay clean and keep my relationships in good condition. So if I do something and it just doesn't feel right to me, I'll usually, that's kind of a sign to me that I may need to make an amends. And if I have to journal about it, that's fine. If I can make it right in the moment, then I'll just go up to the person and say, this thing that I did, it doesn't feel right to me. And if I did anything that offended you, I really apologize. And then I can drop it. I don't think about it anymore. I don't worry about it anymore. And maybe the other person also doesn't think about it anymore too. So it's really important to keep my side of the street clean and immediately clean. And do it immediately. Otherwise, things fester. Okay, step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. So I continue to build a relationship with my higher power by doing the prayer and meditation, learning more about the proper ways to be and act, which is according to His will. I build my relationship by praying, which is asking for help, and meditating, which is listening for His guidance. And it's that still small voice that usually I hear when I'm listening for guidance. And it's usually right. Sometimes it just feels right in my heart. It's just something that is kind of innate in me. That's how I get an answer. And then finally, step 12 is carry the message, which is to do service, any kind of service. All kinds of services are helpful to you, others, and the program itself. It can be at your local meeting level. It can be at the intergroup level, the regional level, or the world level. All levels are helpful. All are necessary. And I myself try to do a lot of service because CoDA is so important to me. And it's, like I said before, it saved my life. And it means a lot to me that it continues. And if nobody does service, it ain't going to continue. So I do what I can to help it continue. And what else to say? I think that was my last slide. So I didn't really prepare any kind of summary, but I hope that that's given a kind of an overview of how I work my program and what I see as important in somebody working the program. It's important to do it with regularity. It's important to do it, the more you do, the more you'll get. It's important to work as many of the tools as you can. Writing and sharing are helpful for me to figure out what's going on with me, and I learn those in the program. And the program provides ample means of, opportunities to do those things. And then I went through the steps as I see how they apply to me, and hopefully those insights will be helpful to you. And with that, I'm done with my formal presentation. Again, if you want, I'll go to the very beginning here. If you'd like my slides, send me an email. There's my address. And with that, I'll turn it over back to Linda to moderate questions, or I don't know how it's supposed to work at this point. So,
thank you. This is indeed the opportunity that people here have to ask questions. And if you want to come out of actually, let me try to unmute everyone. Let me see what happens. Okay, I've unmuted everybody. And you can mute yourselves again by pressing *6 if you don't want to say anything. And if you have a cell phone, it probably has a little raise your hand kind of thing, but please go ahead and ask questions if you're so inclined.
I have a question. I'm on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I can't see the slides because I called in on my telephone. So are you able to say the email address since I don't get to see the slides?
Okay, sure. It's S like Sam, T like Tom, E, P like Paul, N like Nancy, J like Jack, which is my name, A like Apple, S like Sam, at att.net.
Thank you. And also, this is my first time on. Is there a way to tell us how to access the recording if we want to listen? Thank you very much. That was awesome.
Linda.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that if you have, if you can look at the flyer has some phrases in blue, which are the link, but I'll put the link in you wouldn't see it. So if you go to the CoDA website, I'll get back to you on that. I'll see how I can direct you to find the link, assuming that if you're on the phone, you can't see the chat. And thanks for the question.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
What was your name?
Susie.
Susie, and where are you calling us from?
From the area, California.
Okay, NorCal. Well, welcome, Susie. We're happy to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else with a question?
This is Sally. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I want to, I go through the 12 steps, and I kind of get stuck on 8 and 9 because it's talking about people that I have harmed and making direct amends to such people. What about people that have harmed me? And I speak about my family. My family is in the town I live in, but I have no contact with them, do nothing with them, and basically it's because they have harmed me. Is this something I need to make amends to these people and tell them I'm sorry when I'm the one that was harmed?
If an amends is more an acclamation of something. To me, it's something that, an acclamation that I found something that I wanted to change in myself, and that I wanted to both apologize for and tell the other person that I've learned from the experience, and I'm not going to do it again. But in your case, it's not something that you did to them, it's something they did to you. So for those things, I wouldn't think you would have to make amends to them. But it may be that if you journal or kind of realize at some point in the future that maybe there was some, I don't know, some kind of reaction that you had that maybe spurred things on in the wrong direction, or if there's some action that you had or some part that you played in that relationship that caused a problem, maybe you would want to make an amends to them for that. But if there's only them that harmed you, then I don't think there are amends that you would need to make to them. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. The problem is I'm here in my town by myself. I'm retired, so I lost a lot of friends. And having family around would be nice, but they don't seem to want to contact me or be involved in my life or anything because they're, quote unquote, too busy with their lives. And I hesitate contacting them because I don't want to get hurt again. So it's kind of an impasse at this point.
Well, I mean, if you want to have a relationship with them, then maybe you can take some kind of action to have a relationship with them. And only you know what that would entail to make that happen. It's not necessarily an amends that you would need to make. It might be just making an effort to get in touch with them. I don't know, you mentioned that they kind of keep pushing you away, but I don't know. You have to strike a balance between, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, which is kind of what insanity is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also letting them know that you care as well. So there's a balance there. And also there may be, I'm not suggesting anything, but if they're pushing you away, maybe there's a reason they're doing that. And maybe it would be helpful to try to find out what that is. I don't know. I'm just throwing out the idea. I'm not making any inferences. So.
Food for thought. Okay.
This is Linda. This is Linda again. Excuse me for 1 second. To answer Sally's question, if you go to the CoDA.org website, the home page, and you scroll all the way down, there are 4 pictures at the bottom. And just above them, it says Fellowship Forum Recordings. And if you click on Fellowship Forum Recordings, it'll take you to the page where all of the recorded fellowship forums, you can listen to them one after the other. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi. I don't know how the process works to come in and ask or share.
Oh, go for it.
This is Autumn Lake. Thank you so much. This is the first time I've gotten to one of these forums because I couldn't open the flyers. And I'm very thankful to the volunteer who helped me get the numbers. I've gone through the steps in CoDA 1 full time, and I'm in step 9. With my second group, I'm doing it in a group study. We do the steps, the traditions, and the concepts. And I've been really trying to apply the concepts, which really, if you read them, they have a lot of spiritual principles embedded within. And I guess what I want to comment on and ask, and I will mention that I don't really pay attention to the patterns of unhealthy relating, but I pay a lot of attention to, in recovery, what codependents do that's healthy. And I've been around for quite a while, and what seems to come up for me as I go through this process, I think that I had rose-colored glasses on in the beginning. I go back to the tradition repeatedly of the requirement for membership is a desire for healthy and loving relationships. And my definition of what is healthy and my definition of what is loving has changed over the years. And I find that I have many, well, not many, I have healthy relationships in my life. I have new relationships. I have relationships that are long-standing, but I have several relationships that have ended through this process. I'm aware that, I guess the way I would say this is we speak a different language, and sometimes my relationships with 12-step people have ended. And so there is a grieving process that's part of recovering for me. And I guess I would ask if you could comment a little bit on utilizing the steps and the traditions and the concepts, if you have, as a way of going through that grief. I'm in a huge grief process right now. But again, I know that if I continue in this program, that there is a plan God has for me. That may not be what I want. It may not look better, but it will be better. I like that saying. I may not be feeling better all the time, but I am doing better, and I am better. So anyway, thank you. I hope that that's not too complicated.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, actually, as you were asking the question. So for starters, I'll say that I heard a long time ago that as we recover, it's sort of like we're marbles in this big bowl of marbles. We're a marble in this big bowl of marbles. And as one of us shifts, as one marble shifts, and we're the marble that's shifting, all the other marbles shift also to kind of adjust. And some of those marbles may be thrown out of the bowl. And people will, I've outgrown some relationships as I've gone through my recovery. You might also hear something like people's relationships will change as they go through their recovery. So when I came into CoDA, the relationship that kind of qualified me for the program, or that I hit my bottom around, was a lot different than the first relationship that I had after I started CoDA. I mean, I was walking on eggshells around the person, that I hit my bottom around, because I was so afraid of, that she would leave. The next relationship I had, she was actually program friendly, but more than that, I could actually talk to her, and I wasn't walking around on eggshells around her as much. I was still kind of early in my recovery. So it was a healthier relationship than the first one. And my current relationship, I've been in for 20 plus years, and I credit CoDA for allowing me to have for that long. It's much healthier. It's not perfect, but it's much healthier, because I've learned how to have a better relationship. And I couldn't have had a relationship with her when I started. There's just no way it would have worked. It takes two people to be codependent, and as as I become less codependent, the more codependent relationships that I have may fall away, and then better relationships will replace them. It's those are the marbles that are adjusting. And as far as what you had said, that your higher power has a plan for you as you're going through the steps. So we're letting go of relationships that aren't as healthy because they just don't really feel right. Because, like I said, it takes two people to be codependent, and it takes two really codependent people to be in a codependent relationship. and as we get healthier, we're going to attract healthier relationships. And I also believe, from a spiritual perspective, that nothing happens by accident, and that as we work the program, our higher power is, again, doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves, is making us healthier, stronger, and presenting new opportunities to help us grow even more. And so those old relationships where we didn't grow are not relationships that our higher power would want us to continue with. I could look at it from that point of view. So he wants us to keep growing and getting better in our relationships. So I don't know, does that help answer your question? Or
Hi, thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm in the middle of grieving this friendship that's dying, and I think it died a long time ago, and I'm now burying it. But the other person, I think, buried it a long time ago. But what I'm really uncovering is how every time we go back and try to reestablish that friendship, the old unhealthy patterns seem to be at play. And when I can maintain my current healthy patterns, there's friction, and I'm kind of I'm just grieving. I'm just grieving, and I want to remember the reason that I continue to come to program, and I have more counter-dependent issues than codependent, but Codependence Anonymous addresses them in one of their pamphlets. I'm just very much aware that sometimes, quote unquote, you can't go home again. And I think that one of the reasons why I continue to come is because it's really easy to slip back into old habits in old relationships, and I don't want to do that. Thank you. I pass.
Yeah, it's true. And the fact that you mentioned that the old habits kind of automatically come back in that relationship and cause friction are, to me, that sounds, it kind of validates what I was suggesting earlier, that maybe that's a relationship where the dynamic is kind of an old dynamic and you've grown out of it. So, okay. Any other questions? Or next question, please.
Hi, this is Sally again.
Hi.
That statement by the last person really hit home for me. And maybe I need to realize that this person that hurt me, even though I want to be close, I'm probably in the same position she is, as I'm grieving the loss of someone I was very close to, being a family member, and that as long as this person doesn't change, when I'm around her, it's harmful to me. So maybe I need to recognize this as a grieving process also. So I'm thankful for that insight.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Actually,
Oh.
this is Linda. I was intrigued by your description of step 5 and the value of it. And especially when you said it helped you to see a common thread. So, what I ask myself is that because your sponsor took a shovel and said, well, we're getting rid of pages 1 through 30 here. We're going to focus on pages 35 through 45. And this is really the heart of the stuff. Or was it the simple process of going through it? I'm really intrigued by, how things came to be clear for you in step 5. Both from the perspective of someone who's gone through it, as well as somebody who's guiding other people through it. And I appreciate your having made those observations about step 5, because so often, at least in my early experience in CoDA, it's a step that's elided over rather quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the common thread is all about the exact nature, and those are the words that the step itself uses, the exact nature of our wrongs. And so what I did was I went through my list of step 4 stuff, and I looked for a common theme, and I found it. And I'm still working on it, actually, but that was how I came up with it. And when I worked that step with my sponsor, that's what he told me to do. He said, go through my list of step 4 and look for a common theme throughout what I'd written. And of course, not everything's going to point to that, but the majority of things that I had did. And then I thought about how everything applied to my life, and of course, everything applies to my life because they're my steps. And I thought, yeah, so that was the exact nature of my wrongs. And then that's what I was going to go to work on after that. So, yeah, thanks, Linda.
Thank you. What I'm going to do now is end the recorded portion of the meeting, and we'll stay here for additional, for the coffee hour. So, later this month, there will be 2 additional Fellowship Forum presentations, one at 10 a.m. on Saturday, August 24th, and the other at the regular time slot of noon on the last Saturday of the month, August 31st. Those other 2 August presentations will be by Jen L. of Nevada, the chair of the Board of Trustees, concerning the board motions. That will be at 10 a.m. on the 24th. And by Jim Y. of NorCal. The title of his presentation is Problems in Sponsorship, on the 31st of August at noon. So, just before I turn off the recording, those who care to can join me in reciting the CoDA closing prayer. We thank our higher power.
We thank our higher power
for all that we have received from this meeting.
For all that we have received from this meeting.
As we close, may we take with us the wisdom, love, acceptance, and hope of recovery. Alrighty, so.